Blue lights splash across a grocery store's glass. A man in a ragged coat grips a child, an earpiece glinting like a threat. Engines rumble outside, low and patient. A name sits in the air like a match near gasoline. When it's spoken, everything tilts fast and forever, relentlessly awake. Before we begin, tell us where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Your every comment, gift and membership helps us bring more heart-touching stories to your life. The man in the coat is Kade Harlow, haunted, eyes burned knuckles, a prayer in a language he no longer believes. His hostage is a girl named Reyes, hair soaked with rain, clutching a plastic fox. The grocery hums under blue lights, oranges, bleach and fear. On the roof, a sniper holds his breath. Outside, motorcycles idle like a steady heart. Neighbors whisper behind police tape. Kade's hand trembles when Ivy hiccups. He wasn't supposed to take a child. The voice in his ear, cold, precise, promised an exit if he broke something. Innocent. He broke his own rule instead. No kids. A soft click clears the store's speakers. A human breath lands, warm as coffee. "Kade?" a new voice says. Low, steady, aware. Not the controller. Someone who speaks like he knows the shape of Kade's history. "Walk away." Kade tightens his arm around Ivy. The earpiece hisses like a snake behind drywall. The engines outside never rev. They wait, patient. Rain ticks on the glass like a slow clock. Before tonight, Kade worked in silence. He changed apartments often, kept his bag packed, never loved a city long enough to know its seasons. He carried 3 scars, one from prison wire, one from a kitchen fire, one from a man who called him brother, then sold him. He believed in orders because orders made the world small. 2 months ago, a preacher in a bus station pressed a sandwich into Kade's hands and said, "You don't have to stay hungry." Kade threw it away, then fished it out of the trash and ate in the rain. Work found him anyway. A voice with money, maps, and a promise that felt like a door. "Break a town," the controller said. "They'll listen after." Kade nodded, though his throat hurt. He studied exits, camera blind spots, guard shifts. He never planned for a child. Then he saw Ivy's small sneakers by the ice machine, and for the first time in years, his hands forgot what to do. The engines outside belonged to the Novato chapter, red and white patches bright as warnings. At their front stands Archer Cole, Hellsangels president. Broad shoulders, grey at the temples, eyes like winter river water. He speaks into a handheld, voice threaded into the store's ceiling speakers. "Kade," he says again. "This," ends quiet. Detectives glance at Archer, uneasy that a biker has the mic, but the chief let him step forward because of the girl. Because people talk about debts Archer pays like tides. Ivy's mother, Elena Reyes, stands behind the line, hands at her mouth, shaking. Archer lifts 2 fingers toward her. A promise. Without words, "I will bring her back." He doesn't posture, doesn't shout. He knows the earpiece in Kade's ear holds somebody cruel. He also knows names can bend steel. And somewhere in Kade's past, there's a name Archer carries like a key. He waits the way a mountain waits through weather. Rain beads on his leather, and he doesn't blink. Archer grew up in a 1-bedroom place over a bait shop, raised by a woman who picked up double shifts and never said the word cannot. At 17, he worked nights at a mill, mornings fixing carburetors, afternoons riding a borrowed bike that coughed like an old dog. He learned the weight of brothers, the cost of pride, and the relief of a straight answer. Years later, a kid in a ski mask tried to rob the clubhouse bar. Archer knocked the gun away and saw, under the cheap knit, a boy who hadn't eaten. He made the boy a plate and offered a job sweeping floors. His patch never promised sainthood, only responsibility, Protect the small. Pay your debts. Don't leave a mess you wouldn't clean. That code made people mistake him for a villain and a guardian at the same time. Tonight, behind the tape, people judge him in whispers. He listens for the shape of fear inside the store and steers his words toward it. Slow. You don't know me, Kade says toward the ceiling, voice rough. You don't know what I'm carrying. Ivy's fingers curl into his coat. On the counter, a lottery display wobbles from the air vents. The controller's voice crackles in Kade's ear. Ignore him. Archer answers, calm. I know what a man looks like when he's already done with this life, and I know your left shoulder hurts when it rains. Kade blinks. He flexes his left hand like it's not his. 2 years ago, Archer continues, an 18-wheeler jackknifed on Route 12. A blue sedan went under. A kid inside couldn't breathe. Somebody crawled under oil and glass to pull him out. Kade's teeth ache. He remembers fire under his palms. You left before anyone saw your face, Archer says, but the kid's mother found your jacket burned at the cuff. Kade swallows. He had pawned that jacket the next day. Archer's breath steadies. Her name was Elena Reyes. Elena steps forward, face pale in the strobe of blue. She hears her name echo from the speakers and lifts her chin like someone remembered a truth she buried. My son is alive because of you, Archer says, and the girl in your arms is his sister. Kade looks down. Ivy's lashes are clumped from rain. She tries to make her plastic fox talk, but her lips shake. I'm not here to punish you for saving a life, Archer says. I'm here to remind you that you already chose who you are. The controller hisses, shut him up. Move to Plan 2. Kade closes his eyes. Plan 2 tastes like blood and smoke. He opens them to find Ivy watching him as if she can see the battle. Your mother's outside, Archer says, not pushing. If you let her hold her kid, you keep our code, you walk out breathing. The engines outside never rise. They thrum like a patient choir. The chief leans toward Archer. We should breach before he gets desperate. Archer shakes his head once. Desperate men make smoke. Tired men make choices. Inside, Kade moves Ivy behind a candy shelf to shield her from the windows. His hands remember a boy trapped under metal, how small lungs sounded like trapped birds. Kade, the controller snaps, 20 minutes. Archer hears the timing in the static. He lowers his voice. I know what they promised you. A clean exit, new name, money. But men like that don't keep receipts. They won't even remember you after this. A rookie officer whispers, why is he letting the biker run this? The chief doesn't answer. Elena prays into her sleeves. Archer plants his boots, shoulders squared to weather he cannot see. He doesn't say the word brother. He doesn't need to. Sometimes a man offers you a door made from his own spine. Archer becomes that door now, steady, open, refusing to splinter. Kade learned ideology the way some kids learn lullabies, repeated until it filled the dark. An uncle taught him that pain can be purified if you aim it at a symbol. Kade believed because belief is lighter than grief. At 19, he lost his mother to a fever they couldn't afford to treat. He swore the world would notice him, even if it felt the notice like a bruise. Men with ironed shirts and quiet eyes offered purpose and called it family. They gave him maps and names and rules that sounded clean. They never asked about the night he crawled under a truck to save a kid. They didn't want kindness to confuse the mission's edge, so Kade hid the part of him that reached for light. Tonight, under humming fluorescence, that hidden part stands up. Ivy sniffles. Kade shifts, placing himself between her and the glass. The choice wraps its hand around his wrist and won't let go. Do it now, the controller orders. Make them bleed, we cut you free after. Kade's jaw locks, his body won't move. The earpiece crackles again, voice colder, almost pleased. You always were soft, it taunts, just like your old crew said. Archer breathes once into the mic. "Morrow," he says, and the name hangs like a bell tolling. The static on Kade's channel stutters. "Who gave you that?" the controller snaps. Archer answers, steady. "You left your print on a girl's backpack in Fresno 3 summers back. We keep track of men who touch what is not theirs." A detective blinks, surprised at the depth of the biker's files. "You don't speak for me," Morrow spits into Kade's ear. "No," Archer says. "I speak for the child, and for a debt paid in fire." Kade closes his eyes, soft. He has been called worse. He looks at Ivy and decides to be that. He will be soft like hands lifting wreckage, not soft like surrender. "If I put the gun down," Kade asks, voice hoarse, "do I make it out?" "With me," Archer says. "No cuffs until Ivy is with her mother. You have my word." The D. Chief bristles, but Archer lifts a hand. "My word is not paper," he adds quietly. Kade scans the aisles. Camera domes stare like blank eyes. He slides the pistol away with one boot. The metal skates under a shelf and disappears into shadow. Ivy exhales, a sound like a balloon deflating in relief. Kade's shoulders drop an inch. Morrow curses in his ear, a storm of promises and threats. Archer speaks over it like a lighthouse. "We walk slow, we keep the room small. No one gets to turn you into a headline." Kade nods once. He lifts Ivy, weight light against his chest, and steps toward the front where rain tracks like silver strings. Outside, the engines hush as if they are listening to a hymn. A red dot blooms on Kade's collarbone. Archer sees it, and his voice drops into steel. "Roof," he says into the chief's shoulder mic. "Stand down." He lowered the weapon. Silence climbs the ladder. The dot winks out. Kade swallows. He doesn't thank anyone. He just keeps moving. Rain drums a steady tempo on the awning. Elena presses forward, but Archer shakes his head. Patience. Inside, Kade stops by a stack of dog food. He lowers Ivy to her feet. "You want your mum?" he asks. Ivy nods without sound. Kade kneels. His fingers fumble with the twist tie around her little raincoat. He is buying time, he realizes, not for escape, but for courage. Morrow whispers, "We can still turn this." Kade turns off the earpiece. The tiny click feels like ripping. A hook from his lip. "Okay," he tells Ivy, "we're going to the door together." He stands palms open, chin low, the posture of a man giving his life back piece by piece. The automatic doors sigh open. Archer steps inside alone. He unclips his vest, folds it, sets it on a checkout lane like a flag at rest. No knife, no flash. Just a plain black tee and tired eyes. He doesn't come close yet. He gives Kade room to breathe, room to decide. Kade studies the man people fear. He sees the lines carved by weather and midnight hospitals. "A life for a life," Archer says. "You gave one. I'll protect yours long enough to hand you to the law like a man, not a trophy." Kade's mouth goes dry. The word law doesn't sting as much as trophy. He nods at Ivy. She takes one step, then another, then runs. Elena cries out, a sound that breaks and heals at once. Kade's hands float in the air, empty, shaking. Archer takes one slow step, then another, until they share the same aisle, between cereal and hope. Rainwater pools at their boots, 2 lives reflecting in one trembling puddle. Far down the block, a white van crawls toward the store, headlights dimmed. A rookie notices first. Archer's second, a woman called Reyes, taps her helmet twice. The circle of bikes tightens like a ring drawn by a steady hand. No one shouts. Steel shifts. Engines answer. "They'll try to snatch him," Reyes murmurs. "Loose ends terrify cowards." The chief nods and signals 2 units to block the side street. Inside, Archer keeps his eyes on Kade. "You know what that van is," he says softly. Kade does. Abandonment in a white box. He shakes his head, small but sure. Outside, the van hesitates under the stare of 100 watts of patience and threat. Ray eases her bike forward, a quiet wall. The van reverses, fast, then stalls in its own fear. "See," Archer says, "they don't keep receipts." Kade breathes like a man who has finally told the truth. "I'm done," he answers. "I'm ending it here." Elena meets Ivy at the threshold. The girl collides with her the way tide meets shore. They don't speak at first, they just hold, faces buried in each other's rain and hair. A woman from the crowd starts to clap and then stops, feeling the holiness of silence. Elena kneels, to Ivy's height, touching her cheeks as if checking every bone for daylight. "Are you hurt?" she whispers. Ivy shakes her head and lifts the plastic fox so it can nod too. Elena laughs, then cries harder. Archer looks away to give them privacy. Kade keeps his eyes up, hands still open, shoulders steady now. He thinks of the boy under the jackknifed truck, the breath he counted like beads. He thinks of the sandwich eaten in the rain. "Thank you," Elena says suddenly, looking past Archer to Kade. It is not pardon. It is a light left on in a dark hallway. Kade nods once, almost breaks and doesn't. Archer lifts his vest from the counter, tucks it under his arm, and gestures toward the door. Kade walks beside him, with the careful steps of a man learning a new language. Officers tense, but Archer's hand stays visible, empty. Outside, the bikes idle, their riders watching without hunger. No one jeers, no one throws a word like a stone. Ray nods once at Kade, an acknowledgement of a line crossed back. "We do this clean," Archer says to the chief. No cameras shoved in his face, no victory pose. The chief studies Archer, then Kade, then Elena still holding Ivy like Dawn. He breathes out. "Clean," he agrees. Kade turns his wrists for cuffs. The metal touches skin with a cold that feels like morning. He doesn't fight it. Archer meets his eyes. "You kept the small safe. That matters." Kade nods. Tears. Finally rising but refusing to fall. Somewhere a choir of engines softens, as if laying a heavy song gently on the ground. The white van bolts. Ray and 2 cruisers roll after it, not loud, just relentless. Later they will find it empty, still warm, the smell of fear tucked into the seats. Morrow will vanish for a while, but his name won't sleep. Archer will hand a folder to the detectives, dates, places, scars that do not fade. "We keep track," he says, matter of fact, like he's talking about rainfall. Elena gives a statement with Ivy on her lap, the plastic fox tucked into the crook of an elbow. Kade sits on a bumper under a wool blanket, wet hair, shaking hands, eyes clear. Archer stands beside him, not a guard, not a friend, something older than those words. "You owed a debt," Archer says. "You paid it twice." "What about the rest?" Kade asks. Archer tips his chin toward the courthouse. "That part is slow," he says. "But slow can be good, it holds." Kade nods, tasting the strange mercy of consequences chosen instead of chaos assigned. The first night in county, Kade doesn't sleep. He counts the hums in the fluorescent light and imagines the rhythm of idling engines holding time. In the morning, a chaplain offers coffee and a pen. Kade writes a letter to Elena that doesn't ask forgiveness. It names the harm, like a ledger, and ends with a promise to testify to the men who sent him. Somewhere around noon, footsteps slow outside his cell. Archer appears, hands in pockets, face open. "You said you'd walk me in," Kade says. Archer nods. "And I'll walk back." "Out with your name intact." Kade frowns. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not a headline we pose with," Archer answers. "It means the kid you saved will know your name as the man who chose a child." Kade looks down. The pen feels heavier and truer. He keeps writing. Outside, rain starts again. soft on the windows, like a reminder that storms can also rinse streets clean. Weeks turn like pages. Elena visits the courthouse steps with a thermos for officers who stood through the storm. She leaves one by the clubhouse gate, too, next to a small note. "Thank you for returning, my girl. No signatures, just steam and gratitude." The chapter hosts a charity ride for the pediatric ward. No speeches, just receipts paid in smiles. News vans try to shape the story into something with edges that sell. Archer says nothing on camera. He points every microphone toward Elena. She talks about mercy with both hands open. Ivy returns to school with a plastic fox patched with tape and a new habit of counting breaths. Kade's letter arrives in the mail, reviewed by counsel, every sentence plain. Elena reads it at the kitchen table and lets one tear fall for the man who chose a child. She writes back, "Do the right thing again and again." Her words glow on the page like a porch light left on through winter nights. In court, Morrow's eyes are shark black. Kade steps into the witness box with the steadiness of a man who has stopped running. He names routes, burner phones, money drops. He names the way Morrow asked for children, not because strategy required it, but because cruelty felt powerful. The room goes very still. Archer sits in the last row, arms folded, as if holding up the back wall. Elena holds Ivy's hand. The prosecutor asks, "Why did you stop?" Kade looks toward the gallery, not at Elena, not at Archer, but at the exit door. "Because somebody I feared kept a promise," he says, "and because the smallest person in the room looked at me like I could be better." Morrow laughs, a thin sound. No one joins him. The judge thanks Kade and calls the next witness. Outside, the sky is the hard, clean blue that follows storm. The engines on the street are quiet, but their echo stays, a backbone under ordinary traffic. Months later, the grocery replaces a pane of glass and leaves one small crack in the corner like a healed scar. Elena plants rosemary by her front steps. Ivy learns a new bedtime ritual, 3 slow breaths, and a story about a man who chose right. Archer rides out at dawn with Rey, the road silver and honest. They pass the courthouse where a name survives without headlines. Kade wakes before count, does push-ups beside his bunk, and drafts a program for kids who think pain is a map. He writes the first line, "Your life is heavier than a symbol. Carry it carefully." Some nights he hears engines across the distance, like a promise humming. Debts paid, small protected. When Archer stops at a light, a boy waves from a minivan. Archer lifts 2 fingers, blessing, salute, vow. The world keeps moving, but one name still holds. And when it's spoken, everything tilts toward mercy. The road answers with a low, faithful yes. If this story moved you, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Tell us where you're watching from and who you'd ride for when it matters. Your support helps us bring more true-hearted stories to the screen. Until next time, keep choosing mercy and keep each other safe, always and everywhere.